It's not for touching. You can look at it with your eyes, but please don't touch it with your hands. Yeah, so it was quite hard work. I went to, luckily, you know, in Brighton there's so many support groups and the midwives that kept coming and helping, and so I got a lot of support, and it felt like a long 6 weeks, but it was amazing because it was pretty much to the day. I remember just one day suddenly going, oh my god, this is all working, this is great, you know, he's happy, I'm not in pain, and from that point on really it was just plain sailing, and yeah, I loved it really. I had a great experience. Definitely a lot luckier than some women. I didn't get mastitis. I had a lot of support as well. I also luckily live in a very liberal place where I don't have to feel ashamed breastfeeding in public, which, you know, as a new mum, that's a big thing as well, because you have to suddenly get used to having a breast out in public. I'm very lucky with where I live, and all of the baby groups I was going to, everyone was breastfeeding, and that in itself is supportive. And you know, I've got a friend who's had a baby back home, in Gloucestershire, where I'm from, and it's not so much the norm there. You know, people, or if they do, they very much do it behind closed doors, and I think that in itself makes things harder, because you know, you instantly feel, I suppose, alienated, and it just leaving the house is difficult because you're worried where you're going to do when they're going to have the next feed. And I probably left the house a bit too soon with Quinn. I was a bit, I don't know, I think I needed to prove something to myself. Within a week, I remember having a pub lunch with my family because they were all visiting, and I remember the first feed, and actually, yeah, I do remember it well. I was sat in the corner of a pub, and I did feel self-conscious, and my mum came and sat with me and sort of almost shielded me a bit, because that was that early days where you have the whole boob out and you're trying to get your massive nipple into this tiny mouth, and yeah, I remember it well actually. But yeah, it was probably within about a week, and then I remember, you know, the first feed on my own with him when there was no one there to give me the moral support, and yeah, it was an interesting process actually. At first, I did, and I still do now sometimes, if I'm in the right place, like depending on where I am, I can feel anxious about feeding in public. But if I'm with people, if I'm with friends, or if I'm with my partner, I instantly feel less so. If I'm in Brighton, I don't really worry. But yeah, the first few times, I remember having to stop and feed him just on a bench in the middle of the street once because it was just miserable. And I remember seeing an older man approaching, and instantly felt like he would tut or something as he walked past, because I guess it's awful really, but the stereotype of thinking the older generation would be funny about it, I suppose. And he was lovely, and he just sort of smiled and looked away and made me feel really at ease. And I think I was really grateful for that actually. And again, I think I'm lucky that I've never had to deal with any comments or anything, whereas I know some people have. I mean, I stopped breastfeeding Quinn 3 days before I found out I was pregnant with Lyra, so I felt like my nipples were still quite robust, and you know, I thought that it would be a piece of cake really, but again, you don't necessarily, it's the baby doesn't necessarily know how to breastfeed, and her latch also wasn't great, and my nipples were sore, and there were differences in that, you know, they're different babies and they fed differently, but I was also surprised that there weren't differences in that it was hard work again for the first few weeks, but luckily not for as long. The second time around it all sort of clicked a bit quicker. With Lyra there were slightly different issues in that she, even once she got feeding, she used to scream a lot after feeds, and that's because I've now found out that she's has a dairy intolerance, so luckily we've sorted that now, but that was really hard work. Really had a great experience with breastfeeding.